Hey everyone, I'm Jesse from Atlantic Mobile Tuning. I'm the owner of Atlantic Mobile Tuning. I'm going to take this time to show everybody how to make a Gen 5 bass tune for a 6-speed transmission. So we're going to go over what you need to essentially, where to get started and what to do, how to keep things safe, how to go about this properly. And I also need to start by saying that by no means am I the end-all be-all of tuning. This is what I've learned over the years in my experience. I've been doing this since 2004 with HP tuners and pretty much every other ECU on the planet. So let's just get right into it here. First thing we're going to do is head over to the engine tab. On a stock vehicle, there's not really a lot of things you're going to be changing in here. Typically the first thing we're going to do is head over to power enrichment. We're going to actually make this come on where we want it to. I usually like to pick around a 1500 RPM on a 6-speed. On an 8 or a 10 speed, do not put it this low. It will cause chugging and bucking. Mostly we just need to set some temperatures here that are going to make this actually come active. And we're going to head over here and actually set our proper EQ ratio. So if you look at this table, you're going to notice that it's very rich. The way that you figure out your EQ ratio is 14.678 divided by this number. Pick a row and it will give you your air-fuel ratio. In an LT, you're going to want to be north of 12.8. Even up to 13 is still safe. Anything lower than that in AFR, you will lose a lot of power. 1.156 is 12.8 or equivalent. I usually like to clean this end up too and just make it 1. If your truck is flex fuel, I don't really suggest modifying these tables unless you have a wideband and know what you're doing. Sometimes you will have where the enable pedal is not enough. Typically that's going to be a virtual torque problem, but we're not really going to get into that on the bass tune-up setup here. Essentially what we're just trying to show you guys to do is how to actually make a little bit more power. So we're going to head over to our temperature control and our catalyst protection. I have seen this before where the cats get too hot, it starts enriching things. Cause you all kinds of looking around and trying to figure out what's happening. As far as that, we're going to head over to the spark tab. There's something that we need to explain about these tables. If you're running 87, this table you're going to be able to add maybe a couple degrees down here. I usually will come in and soften some of this out. Typically what happens when you hit the throttle in a truck is you're going to come down here like this and across. A lot of people have lag in their throttle and it typically is a low timing area here. But something to note, to be careful about, is that when you are in 6th gear on the highway, you will be in this area. So don't go too heavy on this or putting too much timing here. You're going to get knocked when you're cruising up a hill on the highway. If you're running 91 in these trucks, typically you can come down here and I'm going to say, 20 or so at the top here is usually good. And you're going to fan it out, usually to around these numbers. That's going to get you started. Obviously, you're going to be using your knock sensors and making sure that nothing is going on. And like I say, start slow, bring these numbers up slow, make sure your air fuels are on point. But the most important thing we're going to show you here is this. Everyone takes this table and they copy it over to this low octane table. But how this actually works is the PCM is receiving a signal from the knock sensor, which when you're making power and there's no problem, you're running in this table. As soon as the knock sensor goes off, it's going to divert you to this table. And most people see how I've copied this the same, so now when knock occurs, this table can actually lower the timing. I always try and keep this table at least 7 degrees different than the other table. That way, if knock occurs, we will immediately drop to this table to a safe amount of timing, and then we'll slowly bring it back up to the other one. If they're the same, nothing happens. In this table, that's about all you're going to be touching. Stay away from this table. You see a lot of guys do it like an LS, where they'll just put 5 or 10 in this table. When you get into cams and stuff like that, it will cause you a bad day. The torque management section is another area where you see people spending a lot of time for absolutely no reason. Essentially what we're going to be doing here is going to our peak torque table and adding a relative number of peak torque we are probably going to be gaining, which is typically around 25. Do not max this table out. It will cause you bad days. The brake torque limit is the limit of torque basically when the brakes are on. If you're a person who likes to do burnouts, do not disable this tab, max it out. If you disable this tab, it will actually disable it, and you won't be able to spin the tires at all. As far as performance, you're going to see an increase in power just from what we just did there. Typically on a 5.3, I am going to go up to here and I'm going to put our cutoff to 6,200 because we are going to shift this truck at 5,900 now. So let's go ahead and raise our RPM limit modifiers. I like to put my threshold for RPM limiter 25 so you don't get a real banging limiter. Valve train instability is a bad thing. You hear those big whacking limiters on LS and stuff like that, and it's not really what you want to be doing with an LT. They're kind of sensitive with the lifters and stuff like that. So a soft limiter is best for them. That's about all you're going to have to do there to raise your hard limit. There is gear-based limits. I mean, I typically don't change these. I mean, if you want to be able to rev your truck to the moon when it's -10, that's completely up to you. I really don't suggest it. And that's all we're doing in the engine tab. Now we're going to head over to the transmission tab. The basic things to remember in this tab: command gear limits. You can make a truck really party and downshift and be rowdy by adjusting these to things that actually work. So now we can be at any speed and downshift at any RPM to our maximum. So when you go to downshift now, it's actually going to go all the way to 6,200 if you're there. And you get that more of a manual feeling out of the truck. This is one of those things that just makes it seem a little more rowdy, a little more racy, a little more fun. Next thing we're going is shift scheduling. The stock shift RPM, as you can see, is pretty low. In a lot of my experience, it can go a lot higher. I don't particularly take the higher gears and bring them a lot higher. The truck just doesn't have enough power up in the top end to get that high. So, usually 1, 2, 3, and you're going to see a pretty good increase in your light to light power here. I typically like to go into the upshift area also, add a couple miles per hour, add a couple miles per hour. So this is just going to hold the gear a little bit longer and just, make it feel a little more crisp. I always match my upshift to my downshift, so if you add 2, you subtract 2. Or sorry, if you add 2, you add 2. You want to keep everything uniform, keep it the same as much as you can. A lot of people are going to go in this torque out or shift timetable. You generally try to steer away from there unless you're into some pretty good performance mods or you like a really hard shift. Typically, you're going to start by reducing these areas by 10%, which is going to take shift time away. I really like to work the transmission as much as I can through the pressures before I touch the time. A lot of things you need to realize about this also is that When you're doing these pressure tables, you want to try and steer away from low temperature ones, or when the truck is cold, you get like almost a bump into gear, which it can be concerning to some people. I'm usually going to add 20% to these tables, which is going to give you a nice firm shift, not too hard. The way you're going to get that 20% is by multiplying these tables by 1.2. So you're going to go through and do this all. And like I said, we only modified 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are the only gears we're going to add pressure to. 5 and 6 are overdrive gears. You really shouldn't be power shifting into those gears. It can cause damage to your transmission. We're going to go through and do the same to all these tables for every shift pattern. Keep everything uniformed. And so remember too, is you're just trying to make everything uniform, keep everything soft and smooth. Keep all your table shift patterns the same. You will see a change in some of the shift speeds and the shift pattern tables, but it really is irrelevant to the pressure that we want the transmission to be outputting. I think a common misconception about transmission pressure is too much is bad. Not necessarily. You're not going to break a transmission pump or cause internal failures by pressure typically. Unless there's an internal leak in the transmission, which is going to, pronounce the problem. But typically that's not going to happen. So after we're done modifying our shift pressure tables here, we're just going to head over to our torque converter slip table. And our plan there will be to remove any slip we have in the torque converter. So you're going to find that in these tables. We're going to zero these tables out. We don't want any slip. We don't want that converter taking away any power. These are the things that are adding longevity to the transmission and taking away those things that actually burn it up. If you do a lot of towing, if you do a lot of highway driving, this is when these things are active, and DOD and things like that come on and off. Now that I say that, I did not turn off DOD on the other side. So excuse me for 1 sec. I'm just going to go over there and show you guys how to do that. DOD is as simple as shutting it off here. Sorry, I missed that step in the other part there, guys. So we're just going to continue disabling this. I like to turn this off also. Torque management, I typically put this on immediate because you want things to be happening when you tell them to, not based off a torque curve or a time-based thing. As far as that, that's about all we're going to do in the transmission for a base performance tune, just to wake it up a little bit here. And this is just really basic performance tune. Our limiter, same thing. Just raise the speed to a speed you're never going to hit. A diagnostic tab, I'm really not going to get into that. If you've done your emissions course, you should know what to do there, and that's totally up to you. So this is basically how you're going to do a base tune on a Gen 5 LT with a 6-speed transmission. Hope that helps you guys, and if you have any more questions or anything or want to see some more videos, just let me know.